Hi, welcome to this Facebook Live. I'm Dr. David Purvis, and we're doing this Facebook Live on the Mental Health Wizard Facebook page. Facebook group. So if you come across this video at some point in the future and you'd like to have more of this kind of thing, then join the Mental Health Wizard Facebook group, and that's where we're doing this stuff right now. Hi, Katie. Welcome. In a moment, I'm going to be considering this question. Why? Hi, Colette. Hi, Alison. Why are you still anxious? Now, hi, Malcolm. A better question might be, why were you anxious in the first place? And there are many life. Hi, Joyce. There are many life experiences that, in principle, could. Oh, hi, Tim. By the way, Tim, I apologize. I deleted your deleted your answer to the question because I didn't want other people to see it. But thank you for answering the question. And of course, you're quite right. Hi, Amanda. So let me ask you this one. Do you know why you're anxious? Anyone know? So please fling a comment in. Hi, Sarah. Why are you anxious? I mean, I know why you're anxious, but do you know why you're anxious? Hi, Tracy. It'd be interesting to know, because I'd have to say overwhelmingly, hi Monica, hi Fiona, overwhelmingly people are confused as to why they're anxious. Now, if you don't know why you're anxious, it's really tricky, I think. It makes it hard. Hi Gillian, hey, you found it, well done. It makes it tricky to start to really get on the direction of travel that you want to go and to get rid of the anxiety. So in this Facebook Live, I'm going to be answering the question of why you're still anxious, but I'm interested to know why, if you know why you're anxious in the first place. So please feel free to leave a comment or whatever, and to give it a just a thought in a sense. Now you might say, well, I've had a trauma, and that would be a fair enough thing, and yeah, I agree. Post-traumatic stress disorder, yeah. You might say I have OCD, okay, but why do you have OCD? So that's not really helpful. You might say, I've always been anxious. Okay, well, why? You might say, learning to be anxious as a way of coping. Okay. Hi, Tina. Is learning to be anxious a way of coping? Or is that what I would call a post hoc explanation? Low self-esteem leaves me just feeling disproportionately vulnerable. Fair enough, yep. I think it's because I feel under threat from coronavirus. Okay, Fiona, you may have some underlying health problems, as we have in my household. But as long as you stay safe, in principle, you're not really under much threat at all, I would have to say. I mean, if you're able to adequately self-isolate, then your threat is really rather low. And we can turn coronavirus into a bigger thing than it might be. Now, obviously, it's a big thing, but we have to just think about it a bit differently. Perhaps that's another conversation. Scadophilia, yeah. Hi, Alan. Hi, Martina. Hi, Olivia. Okay, so I think there are a few legitimate reasons why you might be anxious, and we probably will find one or two less kind of useful ones. Okay, but why? Let's take the example, learning to be anxious as a way of coping. Okay, I bet that took place when you were younger, and I guess you coped, right? And so why are you still anxious? So I'm asking this question, right? Why are you still anxious? Do you know why you're still anxious? Are you still trying to cope using the same strategy? Always catastrophizing. I lost my mum. Okay, I had a serious house fire and also been in a car fire, so decided that things do happen to me. Okay, things do happen to you in external reality, Gillian, but why do you have to be anxious? How does being anxious, help in any sense? And why are you still anxious? So why are you still anxious? I think the question is a valid question, and I'm going to attempt. I'm going to attempt to give you the answer. Okay, so what I'm going to tell you is actually true. I mean, it's not just me, making up a story. It's actually just the neuroscience of it. Now, some of you, there are quite a few relatively new names that I'm not really familiar with. I haven't interacted with you very much. But let me just tell you a little bit about me. I used to be a neuroscientist, and so I have an interest in neuroscience. And so after my undergraduate degree at the University of Lancaster, I went to Oxford to do my PhD, my DPhil as they call it there. And I did it in biological psychology, which is basically neuroscience. And then I did a 2-year postdoc in neuroscience. So I've also had an interest in neuroscience. So I'm actually a scientist. As I tell my son, I'm a chartered scientist. I'm a scientist. Okay. All right. Hi, Julie. So what I'm going to tell you is actually true, but it's kind of neuroscience. Okay. So your brain lives in the dark, floating around, about 3 pounds of sort of yogurty stuff floating around in your skull. Your brain does not have any direct access to the outside world. And your brain, in fact, is, well, I mean, it's actually probably the most complex thing that's ever been discovered in the known universe. You know, you'll have heard all this stuff about connections and all the rest of it, right? But actually, you have a massive amount of neural connections, more than the stars in the sky. I mean, some huge number of connections. You've got a massively complex brain. Now, I think that complexity enables us to be who we are, right? Animals that have less complex brains are not human by definition. And animals that have no, well, you can think of it like this. We have like 4 levels of brain. We've got lizard brain or fish brain, which is really basically cord and brain stem. And then it moves up to reptilian, I suppose that'd be lizard, reptilian, mammalian, and then human. And so we have a brain which is substantially greater in complexity and also size relative to our body than any other mammal. And the thing I think which characterizes our brain, makes it special, is that we have 6 layers of cerebral cortex on the top of our kind of common mammalian brain that other animals have. So birds, for instance, have no cortex. Fish have no cortex. Birds and fish are pretty much very similar in what they can do. We have 6 layers of cortex. Now, we have a well-developed kind of neural network, and that neural network enables us to interpret the experiences that we have. Now, it used to be thought that, well, here's a question for you. How does information get into your brain? What are the means by which information gets into your brain? Anyone? Hi, Emma. Put a quick, just type a quick thing. What is the means by which all information gets into your brain? Anyone know? Anyone know where my mug is from? Sensors. Thank you. Right. Okay. Now we have our sensors: vision, hearing, smell, touch, taste, and all of these sensors send encoded information to our brain. Okay. So for your vision, for instance, you have photons of light that hit the receptors of your eyes in the retina, and that sends information. Hi, Nabila. That sends information through to the thalamus, and then to the occipital cortex, the visual cortex at the back of your head. Now, your visual cortex interprets that information and turns it into an image, and we'll call it, in fact, a virtual reality simulation of the world. Okay, so your virtual, thank you, Julie, Dark Side of the Moon, right? Yeah, your virtual reality simulation of the world is actually what you think the world is. Now, I'm going to develop the idea that you don't know if your virtual reality simulation of the world is correct or not. Now, here's our problem, right? You think it's correct. You believe that your impression, your understanding, your vision, what you see of the world, you believe it to be correct and accurate. However, it is not correct and it is not accurate. Now, you don't know that, but neuroscience can prove that it's not correct, it's not accurate. In fact, what we take to be the world that we live in is a constructed world based upon a number of different things. I'm going to talk about them in a minute. Now, I meant to upload. I put a picture up, but I meant to put a different picture up. But let me just tell you the story anyway, and I'll put something up, and you can try it for yourself. It wouldn't work on the computer though. You have a blind spot in your eye. Each eye has a blind spot. Are you aware of that? You can't see it. But if you look at the sky, look at the night sky and see the moon, the blind spot that you have in your eye is 17 times, well, it's the same size as 17 moons. Did you even know that you have a blind spot in your eye? Anyone? Yes? No? Say yes, no. Give me a comment. Did anyone know that they had a blind spot in the eye that was actually relatively large? Fortunately, it's in a different place for each eye because it's where the optic nerve comes into the back of the eye to the retina. Did anyone know they had a blind spot? Interestingly, octopuses don't have a blind spot. Their eyes are designed differently. Did anyone know they have a blind spot? Hi, Albert. No, Amanda. Well done. Thank you. Right. Why don't you know that you have a blind spot? Now, the blind spot is well established. You know, it's a scientifically well established fact. All right. It's not me just making it up. You have a huge blind spot, more or less middle-ish in each eye, but you can't see it. Why is that? So you did, Fiona, you did know. Okay. Why can't you see it? Well, the reason you can't see it is because it's of no value to you. You don't need to see it. Therefore, your brain filters it out. And so your brain actively filters out something which is not useful to you. Okay? But it's also a bit different. Your brain also puts in stuff that is not useful to you and not really relevant. Yep, the brain fills in the information. It's not really relevant to what's going on in your world, right? So your brain lives in its basically its shell, and your brain generates information. It generates activity. It's basically a self. But it lives in a self-generated universe. Okay. Example: when you're asleep, your brain is not inactive. You're likely to be dreaming or doing something else, right? So you live in your brain creates a self-generated environment. When you're awake, your brain also creates a self-generated environment. It creates hallucinations and it creates imaginations. So you'd be very familiar with things like catastrophizing and worry, creating anxious stories, creating narratives of anxiety. That's your brain self-generating data. Because if you know my work, you know that there are two realities: external reality and internal reality. And in external reality, you're not really under any threat, but your brain is generating threat because it's generating an internal world. Okay, now my father, who was registered blind, suffered from something called Charles Bonnet syndrome. And Charles Bonnet syndrome are visual hallucinations that people get when they're going blind, or blind, in fact. So basically, you see things which are not there. And he was he was wont to see small ginger-haired people about the size of kids in khaki outfits, like running around, you know. So towards the end of his life, you know, there'd be half a dozen of them having a conversation, you know, just playing in the corner. Little ginger-haired people. They never interacted with them. They never did anything, fortunately. And so that's Charles Bonnet syndrome. So your brain creates a hallucination that is not attached to reality. Equally well, there's something called Anton syndrome. Sometimes when people have a stroke, they're rendered blind, but they believe they can see. So if you knew someone who, for instance, had Anton syndrome, and you said to them, how many fingers am I holding up? You know, they'd say 4 or 3, you know, whatever. And they would believe that they see it. But in fact, you might be holding up no fingers at all. And they don't know they're blind. And they refuse to believe they're blind because their senses tell them that they can see perfectly well. It's only, hi Teresa, hi Jane, hi Paula. It's only when they keep bumping into stuff and external reality impinges upon them so much that they go, hang on, something's going on here, that they start to realize that there might be a problem. And in fact, what they often do is they blame people for moving stuff around or trying to trick them. Okay, so we've established that your brain gets all of its information from the senses, and we've also established that your brain actively creates experiences for you. But here's the thing. Your brain predicts what's going to happen for you. Now, if you watch my other stuff, you'll know that a few days ago I put out a video and I basically said what you think of as your consciousness is basically a commentary on what's already happened. So by that I mean, if you're watching a football game and you have an online commentary, okay, the commentator is watching the football play and commenting on the play. You're listening to the play, but as far as you're concerned, the play and the commentary are simultaneous, but they're not simultaneous. The play has to come before the commentary. And that's basically how your consciousness works. Your brain does stuff, and then your consciousness comments on it and takes ownership of what your brain's already decided and what's already done. So your consciousness is a few milliseconds behind what's actually happening in your world. If you look at a ventriloquist and a ventriloquist dummy, it's actually called the ventriloquist effect. You look at the ventriloquist's dummy and you think the ventriloquist's dummy is actually speaking, but the sound's coming from the ventriloquist. You can't tell that the sound is not coming from a ventriloquist. You think it's coming from the ventriloquist dummy because your brain creates that understanding for you. Now, I put a picture up on this site just before I started. Did anyone guess what it was? I think I did get one comment which I deleted because I didn't want it to. Yeah. When you first look at it, what do you see? Do you see anything? Does it make any sense to you? Because when I first look at that, I go, no idea what it is. No idea what it is. What does anyone think it is? Hi, Wendy. Oh, hi, Wendy. How are things in, is it Bali? Oh, no, it's not Bali, is it? Where are you? In Thailand. What did you think the picture was? Anyone? Because once I tell you what it is, you won't be able to see it any other way. Anyone? Any comments? No idea. Okay. It's a man with a beard. Take a look at it, and it's now, look for a bearded man in the picture. Can you see the bearded man? Okay. Your brain predicts what's going to happen, and if what actually happens is different from the prediction, your brain modifies its internal working model. But your brain also needs to have a clue as to what it thinks is going to happen. Otherwise, yeah, Tim, you got it with a beard. Yeah, that's really good. Otherwise, your brain does not know how to inspect the picture. Okay. Now, once I've told you it's a man with a beard, it'll be very hard for you to see it any other way. And the man with it'll hit you straight away. Man with a beard. Okay. But until then, it's very difficult to figure out what it is. It's called the visual illusion, and it's interesting because it shows you that your perception, how you see the world, is guided by what you expect to see. Okay. So now, if you think about how hard it is to ride a bicycle, do you remember riding a bike, right? You put a lot of time and effort into riding a bike. You put a lot of effort into figuring out how to do it. But as soon as you can do it, you stop paying attention to it. Do you remember how hard it was to drive a car, right? But now, I guess most of you drive a car, you don't even think about it. You don't put any conscious attention on it, okay? The purpose of your brain and the purpose of your visual cortex is to predict what's going to happen. And if what happens is different from the prediction, it makes an adjustment. But once you can do something really well, like drive a bicycle or drive a car, it stops making adjustments, right? The traffic's always different, but your driving is basically the same, okay? Now, what does this tell us about why you're still anxious? Your brain sees what it expects to see. It focuses on what it expects to focus on to get what it expects to see. Why are you still anxious? Anyone got an idea? Well, how long have you been practicing being anxious? How many years have you put into practicing being anxious? How many years have you put into practicing feeling threatened? or feeling unsure, or feeling unsafe, or making adjustments based upon anxiety, or avoiding things that you potentially are anxious? How many years have you put into that kind of effort? And also, of course, how good are you at it? Are you good at being anxious? And by that I mean, are you effectively anxious? Yes, well done, Gillian, you got it. So the answer to the question of why you're still anxious is that you expect to be anxious. And therefore, your brain is a change engine. It's looking for change. And because you expect to be anxious and you're anxious, nothing needs to be done. You go about your whole business automatically, a bit like driving. Your brain doesn't need to change anything. And that means that nothing changes for you, okay? Nothing changes because you're not telling your brain to change anything. And therefore, your brain goes, okay, everything's perfectly fine. We remain anxious. We're good to go. And surely that is an interesting, wow. Well done, Gillian. You are good at it. After 50 years of practice, you should be. You'd be a very poor anxious person if you weren't good at it after 50 years. But you're also retraining your brain, aren't you? You're also thinking about it and doing something different. Okay. So the piece of the puzzle that I want to share with you today is that you expect to be anxious, and that's why you remain anxious. Because, again, like recognizing the two realities, my bookcase, and that's external reality, and internal reality. In external reality, you don't have a threat. Now, I appreciate you can pick coronavirus as a threat, but you also are focused on looking for threats. If you're chronically anxious, you focus on looking around for threats because you have to make sense of why you're feeling anxious, right? This is a different sort of loop, but a key component of being anxious is looking for reasons to be anxious. Okay, so I've spent about 22 and a half minutes talking about neuroscience. I've given you a really good explanation as to why you continue to be anxious. I think what we'll do in the next broadcast, which I think could conceivably happen tomorrow at 7 o'clock, we could think about how to retrain. We could think about how to retrain our brain effectively out of anxiety. Now, there couldn't possibly be a quick fix, right, for training your brain out of anxiety, because your brain automatically makes you anxious and it automatically looks for reasons to be anxious. So any reason that you can create for being anxious is a fiction. Now, you could say coronavirus, right? But in fact, you haven't got coronavirus. And we could say, well, I'm frightened of it. And I might go, okay, and are you doing whatever you can do? Yes, okay. But to be anxious about it, you have to be creating scenarios of catastrophe. You have to be amplifying and magnifying the possibility of something bad happening, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be anxious. So to say I am anxious because of this or because of that is a fiction. You're anxious because you're practicing being anxious and your brain just finds reasons to make sense of it. But in fact, it doesn't really matter what you're anxious about. Let me finish you off with this one. Yes, you are, Gillian. Yeah, you're doing good. You're retraining your brain, Gillian. Let me finish off this one. I'm going to ask you a question, right? I worry about chicken. I worry about the environment. I worry about coronavirus. I worry about money. I worry about job security. I worry about retirement. I worry about health. I worry about global warming. I worry about relationships. I worry about driving. What is my problem? Who can tell me what my problem is? And don't say I'm messed up. It's a simple problem. What is my problem? Anyone? Come on, leave a comment. Come on. Share with me, please. Don't leave me hanging here. Thank you, Colette. What's my problem? Hi, Kirsty. What's my problem? Anyone? Yes, Fiona. Yes. I worry. Now, it doesn't matter what I worry about, right? My problem is that I worry. Typically, people worry about something that happens to be the thing that's captured their attention or that their brain is putting attention on, right? But it's not the problem. The problem is that you worry. Do you get the idea? So, yeah, well done. Yeah. Now, you say overthinking, Joyce and Julie. And we could call it that, but it's not actually overthinking. It's actually worry, okay? So, worry is just your brain's attempt to make sense of why you're anxious. Now, once you understand that, what we have to do is to stop worrying, right? We have to stop the process of worry. And what you worry about is irrelevant, immaterial. Anyway, that's a conversation for another broadcast. I thank you for taking the time to tune in. I think tomorrow we'll have another one at 7 o'clock, and I'll be continuing this discussion, and I'll talk about how we can go about retraining our brain so that we're not anxious and obviously not worry, okay? Worry is an easy one to resolve, actually, relatively easy, but anxiety takes a little bit more time and effort. So tomorrow at 7 o'clock, and thank you for joining. Please share if anyone else wants to jump in on that, and you know someone who would find it interesting and useful, I would appreciate inviting more people to come along. So I'm going to say good night, and I'll talk again with you tomorrow. Thank you.